Thank you very much, Dr. Things and member of the organizing committee, for your keen invitation to give this presentation at the ARCH meeting. It's a great honor and a pleasure. I don't have any conflict of interest with this lecture. My main goal is to share with you what message I retain from different meetings and friendly exchange with Andreas Grunzig and Richard Meuler, who were my mentors and friends, and some reflection on a story live with a patient. Our journey will take place in 4 stages. 1 from Charles Dotter method to balloon angioplasty. 2, the journey to reach a dream, PTCA. Then the saga of stent, and finally, conclusive message. From Charles Dotter method to balloon angioplasty. In 1963, Charles Dotter proved that atheromatoma plaque can be compressed by inserting 2 coaxial plastic tubes, the Dotter effect. And he wrote a very visionary sentence. On January 16, 1964, he performed the first interventional transluminal angioplasty by using his method. Interventional radiology was born.
Here, the first look shows the stenosis. Now to thread the guide through it, always under fluoroscopy and with care. The patient watches. This time it practically fell through. It's not always this easy.
It looks like we have it made.
Yeah, looks good, but let's not count our chickens for another day or so.
He understood the limit of the tools, but he did find any support to develop new tools. For the vascular surgeon community, there was no future for this technique. In 1965, he tried to dilate an iliac artery stenosis by using the Fogarty ambulatory balloon. He concluded that this compliant balloon was not suitable. Everard Ziegler was convinced by the Dotter method, and he performed the first peripheral angioplasty in 1968 and started teaching the technique in Europe. Andreas Grunzig, fellow in the radiology department in Zurich, visited Everard Ziegler in 1971 to learn the Dotter method. In December 1971, with the help of Everard, Andreas performed the first femoral angioplasty during the Dotter methods. Unfortunately, it was followed by a distal embolization into the popliteal artery. These 3 pioneers share the same vision. The coaxial catheter exerts a longitudinal force on the vessel wall. The application of a radial force seems more appropriate. A flexible catheter with a non-compliant balloon on the distal part can be inflated at high pressure, while keeping the predefined diameter could be the appropriate tool. A non-compliant balloon had to be found. Charles Dotter in US and Ziegler in Germany faces skepticism of the medical community. No future for this technique. No company expressed interest in this project. Between 1972 and 1975, with the support and the confidence of a cardiac surgeon, Eck Senning, Andreas was able to continue treating patients with the Dotter techniques by engaging in the following working axes: commitment, determination to resist adversity, teamwork approach, strong work ethic, continuous quest for improvement by a critical analysis of all the results. He established a collaboration with a retired chemistry doctor who suggests using PVC as high rigidity material. Progressively, step by step, failure after failure, he succeeded in building manually a flexible single lumen catheter with as a desired part a non-compliant balloon reaching a predefined maximum length and diameter for a pressure of 4 atmospheres. The first human balloon angioplasty was carried out by him on February 12, 1974, to dilate a femoral artery critical stenosis. For the next 2.5 years, each balloon catheter will be custom-made for each individual patient. Let's move now to the second step. Andreas had a clear vision on his main goal and ambition: balloon angioplasty to treat patients presenting stenosis on the proximal segment of the coronary arteries. He clearly defined the working axis to achieve this goal. First, get an adequate double lumen catheter, one to inflate the balloon, another to distally perfuse the artery. He found the assistance of a starter, Schneider Company, who conceived and built manually a double lumen balloon catheter, which was tested in iliac artery in January 1975. Andreas possessed the device that will allow him to realize his dream. He asked to Felix Müller in Bern to perform angioplasty using this balloon catheter. And the second point was to evaluate the feasibility and safety in animals by addressing these two key questions. What happened when obstructing coronary artery during 10 to 20 seconds? And what about the risk of dissection of rupture of the plaque? Again, a cardiac surgeon, Marco Turina, trusted Andreas and created a model of coronary stenosis in dogs to test coronary balloon angioplasty. The results were presented in 1976 during the American Heart Association meeting as a poster format. It was for me the opportunity to make the first contact with Andreas and Richard Miller from San Francisco. Two major issues has been clearly identified: the intimal dissection and hemorrhage, and the healing process with neointimal cell proliferation. But what about the risk of distal embolization when applying balloon inflation in human coronary atherosclerotic stenosis? The teamwork approach was a key to find an answer. Thanks to the collaboration of Elias Hanna, cardiac surgeon in the St. Mary Hospital in San Francisco, Richard Miller invited Andreas to explore this issue by performing intraoperative balloon dilatation of the coronary artery. In May 1977, they demonstrated the feasibility of coronary balloon angioplasty in vivo and the absence of peripheral debris embolization.
Weil in einem Meeting hier im Universitätsspital hat man darüber diskutiert, ob Andreas eine Koronardilatation durchführen könne oder nicht. Und die meisten waren dann sehr skeptisch und haben gesagt, ja, wenn dann etwas passiert und so.
Andreas then met Eliane Kalepa, the wife of Hugo Schneider, recently graduated from a business school, who was looking to develop innovations. Andreas' determination, rigor, and work approach make her enthusiastic and convinced. The small Swiss startup became Schneider Meditech in 1977, and the double lumen balloon catheter was patented under the name of Tilaka Balloon DG 2030 Glanzit catheter.
We started in a garage. We had a production of 10 people, and of course there was no clean room. We made about 5 catheters a week, and we were not allowed to sell one catheter to a doctor which didn't show us a certificate from Andreas Grünzig, a training certificate. So, of course, we had a window in this garage and we opened it. We gave the catheter and we wanted cash, Swiss francs. Not US dollars, no checks.
This vision and this company together made it possible to manufacture appropriate device. In September 1977, Benny Meyer presented a 30-year-old man with an nasal stenosis on an LED and was accepted to be the first patient treated with a new technique. Again, the surgeon was okay with the initiative. Do it. If something happens, I will operate.
Dass es überhaupt machen konnte. Ich glaube, ohne die Worte von Professor Senning hätte er die Möglichkeit zum damaligen Zeitpunkt überhaupt nicht gehabt.
And in collaboration with Benny Meyer, he successfully performed the first PTCA. Andreas became aware that his dream came true. He called Richard Myler and said, I've done it. PTCA technique was born.
Das war am Abend vor einem Eingriff, als ich im Spitalbett gelegen bin. Hat sich der Dr. Grünzig bei mir vorgestellt und hat gesagt, er will mit mir etwas diskutieren, aber ich könnte zu ihm aufs Büro. Und dann bin ich dort hingegangen und er hat mit mir da ausführlich das diskutiert, was er im Sinne zu machen. Und dann hat er mir das skizziert, aufgezeichnet, erklärt, was eine Bypass-Operation ist und was er würde machen, die Dilatation. Er hat es noch nie gemacht an einem Menschen. Er hat allerdings schon Tierversuche gemacht, an Hunden, Affenversuche. Und das ist immer sehr gut gegangen. Bei Menschen haben wir den ähnlichen Eingriff schon gemacht in den Beinarterien. Haben wir dort auch schon Stenosen so aufmachen. Aber am Herz haben wir es an einem menschlichen Herz noch nie versucht. Und ich wäre also der erste Patient auf der ganzen Welt, der jetzt das einmal probieren möchte. Und der Grund, warum er gerade direkt an mich gelangt, ist, weil ich jung und kräftig.
40 years later, this third patient, in excellent condition, came in Paris with Benny Meyer to celebrate the 40th anniversary. But the head of the cardiology department were hesitant to let him proceed with the PTCA technique. He had to wait more than 2 months to get the second patient referred. Andreas successfully performed 2 other PTCA in Zurich and a full patient in Frankfurt by Martin Kattenbach. To prove the reproducibility, procedure were performed alternatively in Zurich and in Frankfurt. Richard Myler in San Francisco, Simon Sturzer in New York performed the first case on the same day. After our presentation and publication of the result, teaching the technique was a new challenge and dilemma. Due to the opposition from the cardiology community, it was important to disseminate the technique with wisdom. And Andreas innovated again. He launched the concept of live demonstration course.
So here's the pressure. What's the height?
What? Then what? Then you stop, yes.
And a lot of people have shown this now around us. You cited them as well in your paper. And now you come with your hypothesis that we will name it science. If it's really a large artery, then I would start with the G. Könnten Sie mit Ihnen Dr. Stanford, Chief of Cardiology of the Journal
While sharing his enthusiasm, Andreas insists on the patient selection, protocol, and the need for sufficient training before embarking. He considered that engaging in a systematic clinical evaluation process was essential for continuous improvement. He talked about failure as much as success. Each failure or complication must be analyzed with honesty, objectivity, and shared with peers as a key learning. The protocol consists in the following. After systematic administration of intracoronary nitrate, the feature of the lesion has to be drawn on paper on two orthogonal projections. The pressure gradient had to be checked after closing the lesion. And after inflation and deflation of the balloon, the success was defined as a residual stenosis less than 20% and no pressure gradient. I traveled several times to Zurich. Andreas was always been very welcoming, sharing reflection upon failure and complication, analyzed with honesty and objectivity.
And I didn't appreciate on that study how awkward the orifice of the left main was. It was an unusual orifice.
But we have the impression that we can stop the extension and that we can stop.
He shared the tips and hints he had learned from previous experience. Richard Meyer welcomed me to San Francisco for 2 months. All the first day, we reflect on all the complication and failure, with self-critical comments on the error, and with a comment of Elias Hanna, the cardiac surgeon. In 1980, Andreas invited all the center to share their result with honesty. The success rate was only 66%. 10% acute occlusion requiring urgent coronary bypass surgery. 1.5% of mortality. What should we do? How to improve this result? To share the failure with peers, to learn from each other seemed essential to him. Andreas solicited participants to objectively present their failure in order to gain positive information and learn key lessons for the future. In front of Mason's sons, he invited me to express critical reflection on coronary dissection, and afterward, they gave a constructive remark to the audience. In October 1980, Andreas moved to Atlanta. The message I keep for this friendly exchange is to engage in a continuous quest for improvement by taking into account the systematic critical analysis of failure, sharing them with peers, and learning from the experience of others. Of course, an improvement of the device was required.
For most of our problems at the present time, the balloon catheter is quite a good answer. But the more we depart, as I said, to more diffuse disease, the more we have to change our directions to additional catheter systems. Catheters or instruments which then could solve problems like getting rid of a dissection which is like a flap hanging in the lumen obstructing the blood flow. Catheters who are able to eliminate embolizations, plaques, thrombi, etc. So we have to have more armamentarium than the balloon catheter only. We need more than that.
John Simpson developed a new catheter system, a coaxial, stable guide wire with a very low profile balloon. 1982 in Toulouse, John presented the first clinical results. At the end of a 2-hour debate on a coaxial over the wire technique versus double lumen balloon with a pre-shaped distal wire, cardiologists from Europe and US conclude that the coaxial guide wire technique has a niche for approximately 10-15% of the procedure. A few years later, it was used in 100%. This is when I learned to be cautious before expressing a negative point of view in the potential future of an innovation. Between 1982 and 1985, Jeff Archler expanded the education on elderly, on patients with acute coronary syndrome, primary angioplasty in acute phase of MI, patients with multi-vessel disease or multiple stenosis, treated during one procedure by using a very low profile balloon with a tapered wire. In March 1985, during the SEC meeting, a debate on this topic took place in a full auditorium. Example of complex procedure were presented by Jeff Adler. Multiple lesion, distal lesion in one procedure, resolution of an occlusivity section by plunge or rapidly repeat balloon inflation with a spectacular skill. The patient's safety was Andreas' top priority. He recommended only dilating a single lesion on a vessel. On a patient with two vessel disease, a staging approach, starting with the most critical lesion and 1 day later ensuring that the result is good before proceeding to the second dilatation. Richard Myler invited us, Andreas, Simon, Sturzer, and I, to spend the weekend following this meeting in San Francisco. During a dinner, Andreas expressed the following comment: "Jeff is very strong. I am not capable of doing what he has shown, and few cardiologists can claim to do it. Nevertheless, I am convinced that Jeff's intuition to broaden the indication on patients with acute coronary syndrome, multivessel disease, or complex lesion is the future of the technique. However, currently, if the cardiologists who don't have the same skill try to extend the indication for such patients, the complication rate will destroy the future of this still controversial technique. Our responsibility is to teach how to address challenge step by step, starting with simple lesion, in always placing the patient at the center and not the personal skill. A rigorous evaluation of the extension of the technique on patients with multivessel disease or more complex lesion is mandatory." Anders died on October 27, 1985. The improvement of the balloon catheter technology with lower profile adapted balloon catheter allowed to extending the indication of balloon angioplasty both to coronary and peripheral disease, including iliac, femoral, popliteal, and renal stenosis. In 1986, a German cardiologist patented a motorized system, later named by the US company as rapid exchange. It became the reference technique for balloon and other associated techniques. We can sum up the key message for this period as follows. We need to build our project by engaging in the following action. 1, commitment and determination. 2, teamwork. 3, strong work ethic. And 4, a continued case for improvement by critically analyzing results. The major issue was acute or subacute occlusion of the vessel, imposing a systematic surgical standby. Before expanding the indication, it was necessary to find a solution. Several technologies were proposed, but back to Charles Dotter. In 1969, he published a paper about long-term patency in popliteal duct artery using uncoated coil spring. For the surgeon, saying, this concept of vascular scaffold seemed to be the logical solution. He persuaded a businessman, Hans Wolsten in Lausanne, to invest to create a new venture, MedAdvance, to develop a self-expandable stent in collaboration with Ulrich Sigvar, a cardiologist involved in PTCA. Experimental studies on animals were conducted in Toulouse, in France, and the first implantation in patient was performed in December 1985 by Jacques Puer. On June 1986, during a live demonstration course in Lausanne, Ulrich Sigvar implanted for the first time a wall stent on a patient who presented an occlusion of the LED after successful balloon angioplasty performed by Barry Rutherford, avoiding emergency bypass surgery. However, the initial clinical results were disappointing due to the difficulty of implanting this stent correctly and the high rate of subacute thrombus. In the US, the balloon expandable metallic stent were being developed in one hand by Cesare Gentrucco and Gary Rubin, and the other hand by Julio Palmas and Richard Schatz. The efficacy of stent in treating dissection has allowed for the expanding of the indication in patients with more complex lesion or multivessel disease. But the initial enthusiasm soon faced a new problem. 5 to 10% rate of subacute stent thrombose, despite an aggressive anticoagulant regime responsible of vascular access complication. The risk factor and the chiral platelet aggregation were identified, and the solution were working out step by step the dual antiplatelet treatment. By the way, we must highlight the essential contribution in France of Michael Maurice. The dual antiplatelet treatment and the optimization of final stent deployment overcome the issue of subacute stent thrombose. The use of PCI began. In 1993, the transcatheter approach was extended to PTCI by Ferdinand Krimener in Amsterdam. In 1994, during live case transmission from Toulouse to the TCT meeting, Jean Fajadet, on a patient pre-treated with dual antiplatelet treatment, used the transcatheter approach to place a stent on a proximal LED, and he optimized the final result with a non-compliant balloon inflated at high pressure. 1 hour later, the patient came back to the cath lab and spoke to the audience. The modern PCI was initiated. The transcatheter approach remained controversial for many years as various device closures were investigated. Then start the stent fever. Coronary stenting has been widely applied on patients with long lesion, bifurcation lesion, MVD, primary PCI, and sometimes full metal jacket. It was the beginning of a period where investment opportunity appeared to be beneficial with high market growth potential. Numerous startups developed different stent design. Specific stents were designed to treat peripheral disease, iliac, femoral, popliteal, and carotid stenosis. However, Mother Nature was not under control. A new disease, intrastentary stenosis, appeared to be the obstacle to overcome. 2 randomized studies showed 32 and 22% of in-stent stenosis in single short lesion, mostly treated with only one stent. But in real life, the rate of focal or diffuse or proliferative or occlusive in-stent stenosis was much higher. What about ethics and wisdom when disseminating information? Endocoronary brachytherapy was successfully investigated to treat proliferative in-stent stenosis. But the solution to prevent in-stent stenosis came with a stent coated with a polymer that gradually released antiproliferative agents. Randomized trial in very select patients showed that in-stent stenosis was clearly defeated. The risk of thrombose and the risk of restenosis being overcome, a new fever has emerged, off-label indication of the implantation of DS with multiple overlap stent, bifurcation stenting, and other. Again, what about ethics and wisdom in transmitting information? A group of key opinion leaders has refused to acknowledge the issue of subacute and late thrombose and or pseudoaneurysm related to the lack of full endothelialization, well described by Remy Vermani, and the alarm of increasing mortality sounded by Edward Kaminzin during ESC meeting.
The background is very important, is a key issue of this trial, because it was designed to explore the incidence of stent thrombosis using commercially available stents. However, we selected two with very different healing properties. So we selected on the one hand the, I would call it, weak Endeavour stent, and we compared it to versus the strongest, if you want, the most potent at that time stent that was a Cypher that we will call C6 from now onwards. So that was basically, as you see, the concept, comparing a good healing versus a stent that has a stronger anti-proliferative.
To address this issue and enhance safety, our recommendation has emerged the very long-term, more than 12 months, dual antiplatelet treatment. 60 years after the opening of this path by Charles Dotter, where are we? The new DS technology has solved the previous issue and contributed to great clinical results. But what about the long term? Do the use of metal stent prevent any potential long-term drawback? Critical evaluation and analysis of a large series of patients over a long period of time is necessary. Technology have exponential advancement. They allow extending the field of interventional radiology to treat peripheral artery, obstructive atheroma, thrombi, aortic aneurysm, fistula, carotid stenosis, intracranial thrombi, and now valve, TAVI, other valve, and other structural heart disease, and other. Back again to the message I retained from my mentors, M. Moulin. To achieve success in our project, I advise you to take the following action: commitment and determination, teamwork, strong work ethics that include integrity and humility, continuous quest for improvement, taking into consideration the critical analysis and evaluation of our actions. We now face a new problem: the rapid dissemination of a huge flow of information, easily accessible and sometimes contradictory. This could create a cognitive conflict or disorienting dilemma in our search for the most appropriate care for each individual patient. To overcome them, every cardiologist needs to become familiar with what lies beyond the different form of study and how to critically analyze the result with scientific thinking. Thank you very much for your attention. I wish you a very productive meeting.